In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the Ozone Roadster 4. Over the last few months, I've been testing this glider, putting it through its paces. I've learned a lot about it, and I'm excited to share all my thoughts in this video with you guys. Stay tuned towards the end because I'm going to be pulling some collapses on this glider, and it actually is pretty interesting. As with all my reviews, I'm going to be as unbiased as possible. I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons, but full disclosure, I'm an Ozone importer. I really love these gliders. I sell these gliders, so I do have a little bit of bias there. Speaking of which, if you see this video and you think the Roadster 4 is for you, it's your next glider, I have them for sale. First link in the description on my web store, tuckergott.com. I have every size currently in stock here in Arizona, ready to ship same or next day. If you're unsure about the glider still after watching this video, feel free to email me, info@tuckergott.com. I check that email every morning and I'll get right back to you with some thoughts and any answers you may have to your questions regarding this glider. All that being said, let's jump right into it. What is the Roadster 4? The Roadster fulfills the B-rated category within Ozone's lineup. It sits right above the A category gliders like the Moxie and Mojo. The Roadster is the second step in terms of progression. Compared to the Moxie or Mojo, it offers better handling, efficiency, speed, and flare. It also offers more advanced features like a reflex profile, tip steering, and longer trimmers. The sacrifice is a slight decrease in passive safety when compared to those A-rated gliders. Within Ozone's lineup, the Roadster shares its position with the Spider. These gliders are essentially the same, the Spider is just the lightweight version. I'll be covering the Spider in a future video, specifically touching on if lightweight fabric is right for you. Who is the Roadster 4 for? The Roadster is a great glider for students that have just completed training. While the Mojo and Moxie are ideal gliders to take your very first flights on, I do not recommend taking your first flights on the Roadster. No matter how gifted you are, it just makes sense to do your first flights on something more docile. That being said, most students that excel in training are ready to step up to the Roadster after 50 or so flights on their school wing. This glider offers enough passive safety to make that transition seamless, but enough performance to keep you satisfied. A lot of new pilots come to me looking for their first wing and they say something like, I don't want a wing I'm going to get bored of. First off, in my opinion, if you get bored on any glider, I think you're just a boring pilot. That being said though, the Roadster is not a glider any pilot should get bored of. For many pilots, the Roadster is a great stepping stone to learn wingovers before progressing to something more advanced. But for others, the Roadster will offer enough performance to keep them satisfied forever. Price, colors, and options. Currently, the starting price of a Roadster 4 is $4,400. An Easy Bag Light and Medium adds $105, and a Large adds $110. Custom colors can be added for $250, and shipping is $60. Once again, you can shop tuckergott.com or email info@tuckergott.com if you have any questions on sizing or to see if this glider is right for you. Risers, lines, and cells. The Roadster uses a 4-line system with A's, B's, C's, and D's. The risers include Ozone's neoprene toggles with a snap lock magnet and new printed trim tapes with upgraded roller cams. This is a super nice new feature. Coming from more beginner-friendly gliders like the Mojo or Moxie, the tip steering is a nice advanced feature to have as well. It's basically a separate brake line that only attaches to the tip of the trailing edge. Pulling this line gives big results for very little effort. From the factory, it's on a separate toggle, however, many pilots choose to tie it to the main toggle to create 2D steering. When you're ready for this, it unlocks a whole new level of performance in the glider. The rest of the lines on the Roadster are fully sheathed, which helps reduce tangles. The full-weight fabric on the Roadster makes for better durability in the long run. I always recommend the full-weight fabric option for pilots like myself who fly in rough terrain like the desert. The Roadster has a total of 48 cells, giving it a higher aspect ratio when compared to the Mojo or Moxie. The cell openings feature rods that shape the intakes into a shark nose profile. They actually changed the way the rods are routed on this model to optimize the cell openings. The Roadster also uses reflex technology, which allows the glider to fly faster and makes it more resistant to collapses. This is pretty standard on any intermediate to advanced paramotor wing. One of the biggest additions to the 4th version of the Roadster is winglets. As I learned over in France, winglets help with the spiral stability and allow the designers to increase the arc. The increased arc allows for better handling and more efficiency. This translates to a very locked-in feel, but the glider still maintains great maneuverability. We'll talk about this some more in the handling portion of this video. Inflation and launch. For reference, I'm flying the 24-meter Roadster 4 at an all-up weight of about 113 kilograms. This is the ideal size I would recommend for someone at my weight. All of my launches and landings have been at the recommended trimmer launch position. I found the Roadster to inflate very easily and symmetrically. While zero wind launches are where the Spider really shines, I've had no issues getting the Roadster above my head in zero wind. Unlike some of the more advanced gliders, there's no tendency to horseshoe or buckle on inflation. The glider pressurizes easily and has no tendency to hang back. In fact, I noticed that the Roadster likes to sit a little bit forward from above your head in kiteable winds. At this position, it doesn't want to overfly or frontal, it just felt slightly more forward than the previous model. At my loading on the 24 meter, slow launches were a breeze. There's plenty of brake range to get deep and gain lift at slower speeds. In-flight handling. Going into this, I was slightly concerned that the new winglets would take away from the handling of this glider. You definitely notice the effects of the winglets right away. In straight and level flight, the glider feels so locked in. It feels like autopilot wants to hold your heading even in turbulence. I really like this feeling, and it makes the glider super easy to fly. As you engage the brake to initiate a turn, you do feel a slight resistance initially as the glider wants to continue flying straight. However, once you start cranking and banking, the effect of the winglets is no longer noticeable. The Roadster builds energy nicely and the handling becomes much more dynamic. I was very pleasantly surprised by how this glider felt in wingovers. Sometimes it's tough to maintain enough energy on a larger B glider to get fully over the glider. With the Roadster, this was no issue. I was able to get big 270-degree wingovers easily. The glider was predictable and tracked very well through the maneuvers. Barrel rolls were also surprisingly doable, and SATs were easily achievable with a wrap on the brake line. I have to give Ozone props here. Out of everything, the handling of this glider is something I really think they improved and nailed on the Roadster 4. Trim speed was as you would expect. Ozone advertises an increased top speed of 3 kilometers an hour or 1.9 miles per hour. Pretty insignificant, and I'm honestly glad this is not a feature they're pushing. Top speed is rarely achieved and honestly doesn't matter much to me. The Roadster's fast enough to keep up with the majority of gliders on the market, and that's all that really matters. On a Mojo or Moxie, you will definitely be falling behind in a pack of other paramotor pilots, but on the Roadster, you can trim out and keep up for sure. With the trims released, this glider feels even more locked in. Climb rate was very respectable as well. At my loading on the 24 meter, the glider feels very efficient and climbed better than my smaller but more efficient slalom gliders. Here's some of my impressions after my very first flight on the glider.
Very first impressions on the Roadster 4 24 meter. I'm up here in pretty turbulent conditions and it's handling it really well. I do feel pretty safe under this wing. There's a different feeling. It feels kind of like low aspect ratio and stable. The winglets that they've been adding to these gliders just make them easier to fly. They just want to track in a straight line. You know, I'm in turbulent air and this thing isn't wanting to oscillate, but then when you grab hold of the toggles, you can still rip it around pretty good. Speaking of the brakes, the stock brake length here, a lot of people complain that Ozone brakes are really long. This one, straight out of the box, you know, I'm hitting engagement about 4 inches below the pulley, and I think that's a very reasonable spot to be flying. I don't see any reason for me personally to shorten the brakes. I know some people might want to customize them. I'm quite happy with it as is. So far, feels good in turbulence, feels good in lifty air back by the mountains there. I'm going to dump the trimmers and see how she feels with a little more speed, because these trimmers are significantly long. Feels good. She's boogieing. It has that same feeling that the Viper XC and the Viper 6 have. It's almost like the faster you fly, the more locked in it feels. It's like the winglets really dig in and lock you into your heading.
With the trims fully released, you are allowed to use the main brake. However, if you add any more speed with the speed bar, you must only use tip steering. I think a lot of pilots are concerned with the factory brake length on their gliders. Most find them too long and end up shortening them. I made it a point to keep this glider perfectly stock. Obviously, maneuvering was no issue with the stock brakes, and I actually prefer the lower, more relaxed hand positioning for cruise flight. You can certainly shorten the brakes to your preference, however, you do have to be very careful not to shorten them too much. Short brake lines can cause a catastrophic collapse if they are engaged at full speed. Safety and collapses. Previously, I had tried some collapses on the Spider 3, and I was surprised with how spicy it was. I deemed most collapses unsafe to pull over hard ground on a motor with one reserve at my skill level. When the Roadster 4 came out, I saw many pilots pulling collapses with no issues, so I decided to try it myself to see if it was actually true. Here's how that went.
Throttle's off, camera's set. I'm going to pull my trimmers fully in because that's the safest position and where it's rated as a B glider. First, I'm going to do super easy big ears just to see what happens. They come out by themselves. Okay, now I'm going to grab the split A and the A. I'm going to pull the right side in nice and slowly and controlled just to see how it responds. And it's really freaking hard to get this down. I can barely even muscle it. Look at that. It like doesn't want to go. So I'm going to have to snap it. We're going to do one nice and aggressive. Dude, I can't even get it down. Let's just try the straight A.
Oh, yes, sir.
Literally can't get it down. Look at that. All right, I'm going to try a frontal. This might be spicy and we're kind of low. 3, 2, 1. I'm going to hold it a little more this time. Literally nothing. 3, 2, 1. Dude, there's so much pressure on the A's. And the surge is like non-existent. I thought people were exaggerating when they were trying to collapse this thing, but it's literally like zero input, zero surge. What do you think? Is that enough conclusive evidence? I could go back up and do more, but I feel pretty solid with that. What do you think?
Dude, it looked like it was reinflating.
It's so damn hard to get it to collapse.
From my testing, I concluded that the Roadster 4 is absolutely difficult to collapse. The amount of force required was incredible and my hands hurt just yanking on the A's. Truthfully, I probably should have had dedicated collapse toggles to really get the full effect. Regardless, the reaction to the collapses I did achieve were absolutely more benign than the collapses I experienced on the previous model. The glider didn't want to surge hard at all. It didn't want to change course either. The only way I was able to get it to change course was by holding down one set of A's. Obviously, these induced collapses do not translate perfectly to real-world collapses, but that being said, I would feel very confident flying this glider in trashy conditions. It feels like it strikes a very good balance between being absurdly resistant collapses, but simultaneously being very docile when collapses happen. I've never really felt this way about a glider before. It's usually one extreme or another. This is the second thing I have to give Ozone props for. I noticed a big difference in the passive safety of this glider when compared to the previous generation. Landing. Landing the Roadster 4 is easy as can be. The lack of oscillations is great for the beginner pilot as it flies itself on final. The flare is powerful and it never gives up at the end, exactly what you would expect from a glider like this. If you're transitioning from a Mojo or Moxie, just be prepared for more power in the flare. You may have a tendency to overflare in the very beginning. All of my landings were done at the suggested neutral position and stock brake length. There's plenty of travel to get a powerful flare, but you also don't need to worry about hitting the stall point if you fully bury the brakes. Trike use. I did not have an opportunity to test the Roadster 4 on my trike, however, I believe it would perform very well. The symmetrical inflation, straight tracking, and maneuverability would make this a very fun and easy trike wing. Advanced skills. I think the Roadster is a really great platform to learn wingovers on. A lot of pilots want to jump on a more advanced glider before they can fully handle something like the Roadster. I would encourage every new pilot to get really good at wingovers on the Roadster first. It's going to keep you safe and teach you all the skills you need to handle the more advanced gliders. Obviously, I put this glider through the paces in my review, just to show you that there's a lot of advanced skills that you can learn on this glider. Freeflight use. The Roadster can be used in the Freeflight environment, but I would say it's not the most ideal choice. Something like a Kona is more purpose-built for that environment. If you do any free flying on the Roadster though, it is recommended that you pull the trims all the way in to the slowest position to achieve the best safety and minimum sink rate.
So this is a pretty great clip for the free flying use of this glider. Unanticipated. I'm up here in the superstitions and it's absolutely nuking. And I'm getting ridge lift off of this lower shelf. I'm far away from it, kind of riding the lift band and just floating, gaining altitude at idle. So yes, Indeed, you can use the Roadster 4 and the Spider 4 for Freeflight.
Cons. I said I would include cons as well, but it's honestly tough to pick out cons. But here we go. As I mentioned, it feels like the glider sits a little slightly past directly overhead. I can see how this might trip up a newer pilot. You may need to add a touch more brake than you're used to while launching the glider in higher winds to keep the glider from overflying. Also, I don't like that the easy bags are no longer included. I think every pilot uses an easy bag, so it's just an extra item that increases the overall cost. Conclusion. So overall, I've been really impressed with the Roadster 4. Not only does it feel like a natural evolution coming from 3, it actually feels more like a new generation to me. The addition of winglets, the improvements in the handling, and the improvements in the passive safety, I think really set it apart from the 3. I think it'll continue to be one of Ozone's top most popular models, and I'll continue to recommend it to new pilots coming straight out of training. All that being said, if you have any more questions after watching this video, be sure to email me info@tuckergott.com. If you're ready to make a purchase, first link in the description. And remember, I have every size in stock, ready to ship same or next day. If you have any questions on the current stock, email me. I have certain colors aren't in stock, so just hit me with an email. Till the next one, hope you guys enjoyed. Fly safe, have fun. Peace.